Another Jewish cemetery was targeted by vandals over the weekend. This is a cemetery in northeast Philadelphia, and according to Jim McReynolds, a detective for the Philadelphia Police Department, at least 75 to 100 headstones at Mount Carmel Cemetery were discovered knocked over Sunday morning. Several of the headstones were broken. So here are some pictures of what the scene looked like. The Anti-Defamation League is offering a reward of $10,000 for information leading to the arrest of the perpetrators. Apparently there was no surveillance or cameras there, so they have no idea who did it. They have no idea what the motive was. But it is important to keep in mind, you know, the context of everything. This is the second situation where vandals targeted a predominantly Jewish cemetery, and Jewish community centers throughout the country have been receiving bomb threats and all sorts of threats. So
hard to believe. You know, one, maybe it's drunk kids and they just feel like wrecking a cemetery. I don't think that's what drunk kids do. We had this, the response on my Twitter feed makes me hesitant to say this, but look, man, we all know if they find out who did it, they did it because it was a Jewish cemetery. Like, that's, odds are, I'm all for investigating it independently, but odds are that is what it's going to be.
So let me give you all sides of it, right? So obviously the Jewish burial ground in St. Louis, then this. So, okay. Furthermore, in January, someone threw rocks through 8 windows in a Philadelphia synagogue, and a window at a temple was broken in December. It's all in the same area. But now that one, they think those two were connected, but not a hate crime. So probably not similar to this, if this one is a hate crime. Just want to be clear.
Okay.
Now, and there were tombstones knocked over earlier this month at Holy Redeemer Cemetery. That's a Catholic burial ground 2 miles from Mount Carmel.
Well, that's that, and I was going to say, that's a totally relevant. If cemeteries are headstones are getting knocked over elsewhere in Philadelphia, well, then that suggests
what is wrong with people?
That suggests,
what is wrong with people?
That's just a degree of dementedness in young people.
Yeah, but so
these specific young people.
Now, and there was was it a mosque or a church that was burnt down? I think it was a mosque, I think, and they wrote something about Trump. And no, I'm sorry, it was a black church. That's what it was. And people thought, because they said vote Trump or whatever, that it was probably Trump people. It turned out that it was actually someone who goes to that church. And he's got his own problems and he's crazy in his own way. So you never know for sure.
That's right.
But within the context of bomb threats against dozens of Jewish community centers across the country that has happened recently, well, here's what we should do. Investigate.
That's right.
Right.
That's all I'm asking for.
So let's look into this. It is not good context. And I actually want to give a ton of credit to a whole set of folks that are rightly saying, let's investigate this and figure out what happened. Representative Bob Brady, and then Anti-Defamation League, of course. But my favorite was the Anne Frank Center. And they called on President Trump, not because he did it or his supporters necessarily did it. That's what the investigation is for. But he said, look, they basically said, you took a long time to answer whether rising anti-Semitism was a real issue in the country. You finally did the other day, thank you. But when this stuff is happening and the tombstones are being knocked over in different places in the country and bomb threats are being called into these Jewish community centers, you got to speak up immediately, forcefully, and why not do a press conference about this, right? And call attention to it. And just one more thing, he said, Mr. President, this is, again, the Anne Frank Center. Mr. President, it's time for you to deliver a primetime, nationally televised speech live from the Oval Office on how you intend to combat not only anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia and other rising forms of hate. Because their point is, hate leads to more hate. And by the way, we're decent human beings who all care for each other. So you should fight against both those things. They're both significant problems.
And when Trump spoke up about it, like, I got it, he did it. I don't care. I don't think speaking up about it is the most important thing a president does. These are symbolic gestures. They're less important to me. I hear the argument that they're important to some. Taken in the context of leaving Jews out of the Holocaust, and there again is a pattern and a suggestion here. But he did it in a way that was incredibly un-Trumpian. Like, one of the great things about Trump, well, not a great thing about Trump, one of the effective things about Trump, if you're a Trump supporter, is he has this remarkably unique way of communicating, which is incredibly effective. It has befuddled most of the mainstream media. We don't know how to handle it. We don't know whether to not cover him, to cover him. It's confusing. And so he read straight from a paper, looking down the entire time without any of the, hey, knock it off, okay? It's bad. It's very, very bad. It's bad, and I'm tired of it. I'm gonna put a stop to it. You watch. Like none of that stuff, which is like the goofy way he has of speaking. Believe me, he can give an anti-vandalism against Jews speech without notes in Trump style. But he didn't, and it seemed weak, and it seemed like exactly what it was, which was, Ivana told me I have to do this, so I'm
Yeah,
gonna do it.
absolutely. He uses a lot of tough talk when it comes to talking about Mexicans that
That's
he wants
right,
to
yeah,
deport.
right.
You know, he uses very descriptive language. He likes to generalize and stereotype them, talk about how bad they are, how they're criminals. And he uses a lot of tough talk when it comes to issues like that. But when it comes to issues involving anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, bigotry, hatred, no, begrudgingly says anything condemning it.
So how about the best part of the story, though, in St. Louis, and maybe it'll happen again here, was that goal to raise, was it $2,000 or $20,000?
$20,000.
$20,000 by a Muslim group, a couple of
Linda Sarsour. Yes.
Right, and 20,000. They met their goal within like 8 minutes, and busted through the goal. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Cenk, helped enormously and gave some money. Turns out his family was in that cemetery. He didn't even realize it.
Oh, wow.
But he just thought it was nice, and that's why. And again, there's Jews and Muslims coming together, and there's some. So there's some nice things happening as a result of this, and it's good to see.
Yeah, and the Muslim group that was helping has promised to also help in Philadelphia as well.
God bless them.
In repairing the damage that was done here. And again, the Anne Frank Center said, the problem is when you don't address it, it seems like you're giving oxygen to the people who will take it as a negative sign. And you're right, Ben and Anna, that when Trump wants to say someone's bad, he knows how to do it. They're bad dudes, they're bad hombres. And there hasn't been a lot of that kind of talk.
I'm going to change my mind. I'm persuaded, because I get tired of talking about politicians who don't condemn, right? Because we spend a lot of oxygen on, he didn't, because the right does it with how come centrist Muslims don't speak out against this, and then we fire back with how come centrist white people don't talk about the guy who shot the 2 Indians, right? Like, it's crazy. It's not their job. It's not a thing that needs to happen. But you do give it oxygen, and if you're the president of the United States, and this is happening in the United States of America, you should condemn it. You should condemn it aggressively and forcefully, and with the full power and awesomeness, old school meaning of awesomeness, of your office. And we've seen Trump use that all the time when it's something that he cares about. And he took forever here, and then he did it, he did it in very weak sauce fashion. So I'd like to see him do it. I'd like to see him do it with some degree of aggression and trumpetness.
Yeah, and one last thing. It's not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's a freebie.
So
it's a freebie.
easy.
It's a freebie. Unless
you think it actually. Remember the first time he was asked about anti-Semitism, he started talking about his huge electoral college wins and the tremendous enthusiasm. So the point was, I don't want to dampen the enthusiasm.
I don't want to. It's not that he's in favor of it. I'm sure he's against it. I think he probably is against it. He loves his daughter. He likes his son-in-law. But what he doesn't want to do is irritate those people who have been some of his most enthusiastic supporters.
Corporate media is awesome.
Wrong.
Independent media is the way to go.
Believe me. Believe me.
Support independent media right now. Become a Young Turks member. TYTnetwork.com/join.